In the quiet, manicured cul-de-sacs of Fishers, Indiana, safety isn't just a feeling. It's an unspoken guarantee. But on the morning of January 6, 2026, that guarantee was shattered by a single empty bedroom. For 17-year-old Hailey Buzbee, life was a series of frolicking videos, college dreams, and deep family ties. To her father, she was the smart, beautiful girl who filled their home with light. To the person waiting in a car outside at 10 p.m. the night before, she was a target. Within hours, the girl known for her kindness would vanish into the Indiana winter, leaving behind a digital trail that led straight into a nightmare, and a legal system that refused to sound the alarm until it was far too late. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The story begins in the Enclave at Vermilion neighborhood, a community tucked away near Flat Fork Creek Park, where the streets are lined with suburban dreams. January 5th, 2026, started like any other Monday for the Buzbee family. Hailey, a high school senior just months away from graduation, spent the evening with her parents and siblings. There were no heated arguments, no signs of distress, and no bags packed for a long journey. However, around 10 p.m., while the rest of the house settled into the quiet rhythms of sleep, Hailey made a choice that would alter the course of her life forever. She stepped out of her front door, wearing a white blouse, gray jeans, and a black puffer jacket, carrying a pink Vera Bradley duffel bag. She didn't look like someone running away. She looked like someone meeting a friend. When the sun rose on January 6th, the realization hit the Buzbee household like a physical blow. Hailey was gone. Her father, George Buzbee, immediately sensed that something was wrong. This wasn't a teen rebellion. This was an anomaly. He contacted the Fishers Police Department, but here is where the first major obstacle of the case appeared. Because Hailey was 17 and had seemingly left the home under her own power, she was classified by law enforcement as a runaway. Under Indiana law at the time, this classification meant she did not meet the stringent criteria for an Amber Alert, which typically requires evidence of a forced abduction and an immediate threat of death or serious injury. She also didn't qualify for a Silver Alert, reserved for those with mental disabilities. Hailey was effectively caught in a legislative blind spot. Despite the lack of a statewide alert, the Fishers community mobilized. The missing posters began to appear on the windows of local businesses along 116th Street. Her father turned to social media, launching a digital campaign that would eventually reach thousands. He shared videos of Hailey frolicking through school halls, a term that would become synonymous with her vibrant spirit, hoping that her face would become so recognizable that no one could hide her. He posted daily updates, his voice thick with a mixture of desperation and unwavering hope, pleading for his daughter to please just come home. As Fishers detectives began their canvass of the neighborhood, they started to piece together the mechanics of her departure. They didn't find signs of a struggle, but they did find a digital footprint. Hailey had been active in the world of online gaming, a space where she believed she was building friendships. Investigators soon realized that while Hailey was physically safe in her suburban home, her digital front door had been wide open. A 39-year-old man from Ohio, Tyler Thomas, had been communicating with her through these gaming platforms. He hadn't broken into her house. He had groomed his way into her confidence. The first major breakthrough came from neighborhood surveillance. Ring doorbells and security cameras captured a suspicious vehicle, a car that didn't belong to any resident, lingering near the Buzbee home on the night of January 5th. Police were able to confirm that Hailey didn't wander off into the woods. She walked directly to that vehicle and got inside. It was a voluntary act, but as the investigation would soon prove, it was an act predicated on a lie. She wasn't leaving for a new life. She was being lured into a trap. For the next 26 days, the search for Hailey Buzbee became a cross-state operation. The Fishers Police Department, now realizing the gravity of the endangered status of the teen, began working with the FBI and Ohio authorities. The car seen on the video was eventually traced to Tyler Thomas. When police first made contact with him, he was surprisingly cooperative. He admitted to picking Hailey up in Fishers, but his story was a classic half-truth designed to buy time. He told investigators that he had simply given her a ride and dropped her off on the side of a road in western Ohio because she changed her mind about the trip. This claim sent search parties scouring the rural roads of western Ohio. But as the days ticked by, the narrative began to crumble. Why would a 39-year-old man drive hours across state lines to pick up a teenager he met on a video game, only to leave her on a dark roadside? The logic didn't hold. Back in Fishers, the community held a birthday vigil for Hailey as she turned 17 while missing. Her family sang "Happy Birthday" to the empty air, their prayers growing more urgent as the investigation moved away from the runaway theory and towards something much more sinister. The Fishers police chief later admitted that it pained the department to watch the family hold on to hope while the evidence began to point toward a dark conclusion. While the public was looking for a girl on a roadside, detectives were looking at Tyler Thomas's digital life. They seized his phone and computers, and what they found shifted the case from a search for a missing person to a recovery mission. The devices didn't just show messages. They showed evidence of crimes that had occurred in the hours and days after she left Indiana. By late January, the investigation had moved its focus to Columbus, Ohio, and a specific rental property in Hocking County. The evidence in Thomas's car was becoming harder for him to explain away. There were signs of her presence that contradicted his side of the road story. The FBI's involvement intensified, bringing in sophisticated forensic tools to track the movements of Thomas's phone on the nights following the disappearance. They weren't just looking for where she was. They were looking for where he had gone when he thought no one was watching. As the first month of 2026 drew to a close, the hope that had sustained the Buzbee family was about to be met with a devastating update. The police had enough evidence to believe that Hailey was no longer alive, and they were prepared to confront Thomas with the cold, hard facts of his own movements. The cooperative suspect was about to find himself at the center of a murder investigation that would span 3 different Ohio counties. Just as the FBI prepared to lock down the Hunter Avenue townhome where Thomas had stayed, they discovered a hidden cache of digital evidence so disturbing that it changed the charges against him instantly, revealing that the ride Hailey took wasn't just a kidnapping, but a documented descent into a predator's private gallery. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The investigation into the disappearance of Hailey Buzbee underwent a dramatic shift in tone as it crossed the border from the quiet suburbs of Indiana into the urban heart of Columbus, Ohio. While Fishers police were still processing the timeline of a missing teenager, Ohio authorities were descending upon an address that would soon become synonymous with the case: Hunter Avenue. Located in the historic Victorian village, Hunter Avenue is a street characterized by beautifully restored 19th century architecture and off-market townhomes valued at nearly $1 million. It was the last place anyone expected to find the trail of a man who, upon his arrest, would claim to be homeless. This homeless paradox became one of the most baffling elements for the public. When 39-year-old Tyler Thomas was booked into the Franklin County Jail, his official paperwork listed no permanent residence. Yet, the criminal complaint told a vastly different story. It alleged that Thomas had been staying at the Hunter Avenue residence, using the affluent neighborhood as a backdrop for a series of horrific acts. This was not a man living on the margins of society. He was a man hiding in plain sight, utilizing high-end real estate and short-term rentals to mask a predatory lifestyle. Investigators began to suspect that Thomas was a chameleon, someone who could navigate wealthy spaces and rural hideouts with equal ease, ensuring he left no permanent footprint behind. The execution of a search warrant at the Hunter Avenue home on January 21, 2026, provided the forensic smoking gun that investigators had been dreading. Inside the residence, police seized multiple digital devices belonging to Thomas. What they found on those screens was not just communication with a minor, but a cache of visual evidence so graphic that it immediately triggered a new set of felony charges. The criminal complaint detailed that Thomas's phone contained photos and videos of a minor performing sex acts, content that was allegedly recorded within the walls of the Hunter Avenue home. Even more chillingly, investigators discovered a video of Hailey that had been deleted, an attempt to scrub the digital record of her presence that was ultimately thwarted by forensic experts. These findings shifted the legal strategy instantly. Thomas was no longer just a person of interest in a missing persons case. He was a suspect in a major exploitation investigation. Prosecutors in Franklin County hit Thomas with 2 counts of pandering obscenity involving a minor and 1 count of tampering with evidence. The bond was set at a staggering $1.5 million, reflecting the court's view that Thomas was an extreme flight risk and an imminent danger to the community. During the hearing, the prosecutor emphasized a terrifying reality. We do not have contact with a prosecuting witness in this case. It was a coded acknowledgement that while they had evidence of abuse, the victim herself was still missing. The Hunter Avenue evidence provided a timestamp for Hailey's final days. It suggested that after she entered Thomas's vehicle in Indiana, she wasn't taken to a remote woods immediately. She was brought into the heart of Ohio's capital. The dichotomy of the location added a layer of psychological horror to the case. Neighbors on Hunter Avenue, who lived in houses sold for $800,000, were shocked to learn that a teenage girl from Indiana had potentially been held and abused just feet from their front doors. The investigation was revealing a man who didn't just lure Hailey away from her family, but who documented her trauma as if it were a collection to be curated. As the digital evidence began to paint a picture of what happened in Columbus, the physical evidence in Thomas's vehicle began to point toward a second location. GPS data and cell tower pings indicated that Thomas's car hadn't just sat on Hunter Avenue. It had made multiple trips to a short-term rental property in Hocking County, a rural area south of the city known for its rugged cliffs and dense forests. Police realized that the Hunter Avenue home was only one chapter of the story. If the exploitation happened in the city, the finality of the crime likely occurred in the wilderness. The cooperative mask that Thomas had worn during his initial interview with Fisher's police was now completely gone. He sat in a jail cell in Franklin County, facing decades of prison time for the images found on his phone, while the FBI and local sheriffs began to converge on the Hocking County rental. The search for a runaway had officially ended. The hunt for a murderer had begun. The community of Fishers, which had been holding vigils and praying for a safe return, was forced to watch as the news reports shifted from missing to pandering and evidence tampering. The hope was fading, replaced by a cold, hard demand for justice. As forensic teams began tearing apart the short-term rental in the Hocking County woods, they discovered that Thomas had made one final trip in his vehicle, a trip that led deep into the neighboring Perry County, to a location so remote that he believed the earth would keep his secret forever. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The final weekend of January 2026 transformed the investigation from a search for a missing person into a grim, multi-county forensic recovery operation. While the public's attention was still fixed on the Victorian Village townhome and the digital cache found on Hunter Avenue, a high-stakes legal negotiation was taking place behind the reinforced glass of the Franklin County Jail. Tyler Thomas, facing a $1.5 million bond and mounting evidence of child exploitation, was no longer in a position to maintain his side-of-the-road alibi. The FBI and local prosecutors were now utilizing a specific brand of legal leverage: the cooperation for closure maneuver. In Ohio, the threat of the death penalty serves as a powerful instrument of discovery. Because the evidence suggested that Hailey had been moved across state lines and through multiple jurisdictions, Thomas was facing a potential aggravated murder charge, a crime that, under Ohio law, can carry the ultimate sanction when committed in conjunction with kidnapping or sexual abuse. It was this looming reality that prompted a sudden shift in the suspect's demeanor. Thomas's defense attorney, appearing before the media after a closed-door session, revealed a chilling development. The FBI had physically removed Thomas from the county jail and transported him under heavy guard to a remote, rural location. The destination was Perry County, a rugged landscape south of Columbus that had not been part of the initial search grid. This was a tactical choice by the suspect. By bypassing the better-known Hocking Hills area and moving further into the secluded woods of Perry County, Thomas believed he had found a place where the earth would never give up its secret. However, under the direct supervision of federal agents, Thomas was forced to retrace his final steps. On a Saturday afternoon that felt like the end of hope for the Fishers community, Thomas led investigators to a specific site in a wooded area. There, the search ended. The recovery was a grueling, hours-long process. The Perry County coroner and state forensic teams worked through the night, processing a scene that offered a stark, silent contrast to the vibrant, frolicking videos her father had shared. The discovery confirmed what Fisher's police had predicted based on the evidence in Thomas's car. Hailey was deceased, and she had been for some time. Initial reports suggested that her death likely occurred within the first few days of her disappearance on January 5th, meaning that for most of the 26-day search, the hope the world held onto was already a memory. The discovery immediately triggered a jurisdictional debate. With 3 counties involved, Franklin, Hocking, and now Perry, the legal maneuvers became a puzzle of primary venue. While Thomas was already charged with pandering in Columbus, the murder investigation began to center on Hocking County, the location of the short-term rental property where the crime was alleged to have been committed before she was moved to Perry County. This distinction was critical. The location of the murder, not just the body, often dictates which prosecutor takes the lead. As the news of the recovery broke, the Fishers police chief took to a podium in Indiana, his voice heavy with the weight of the news. "It pains me today to let you know," he began, officially ending the runaway narrative that had initially hampered the case. The community's reaction was a mixture of profound grief and mounting fury. The question on everyone's lips was no longer, "Where is Hailey?" but, "How did this happen? How did a 39-year-old with no prior criminal history manage to lure, exploit, and kill a teenager while the system's Amber Alert remained silent?" Even with the body recovered, the cooperation of Tyler Thomas remained a point of contention. His attorney claimed he was helping the family find closure, but prosecutors viewed it differently. This wasn't a selfless act. It was a desperate attempt to avoid a life sentence or a death warrant. The leverage of the pandering charges, crimes that could be proven easily with the data on his phone, meant Thomas was already looking at a lifetime behind bars. The recovery of Hailey's body was simply the final piece of evidence needed to ensure that lifetime would be served in a maximum security facility. But as the forensic team at the Perry County site began their final sweep, they realized that Hailey's personal belongings, including her pink Vera Bradley bag and the white blouse she wore the night she vanished, were nowhere to be found, suggesting that Thomas had a much more systematic method of disposing of evidence than he was leading investigators to believe. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The recovery of Hailey Buzbee's body in the quiet woods of Perry County didn't just end a search. It ignited a firestorm of advocacy that reached the highest levels of Indiana's government. As the community of Fishers transitioned from vigils to funerals in early February 2026, the grief was sharpened by a haunting realization. The system had treated Hailey like a runaway for the most critical weeks of the investigation. The frolicking girl who had been lured across state lines had been let down by a set of laws that were built for a physical world, failing to account for the digital front door that predators like Tyler Thomas now use to enter our homes. In the wake of the tragedy, George Busbee's online campaign evolved into a movement for Hailey's Law. The centerpiece of this movement is the Pink Alert, a proposed statewide notification system designed specifically to fill the gap between the Amber and Silver alerts. The logic behind the Pink Alert is rooted in the hard lessons of Hailey's final month. Because she was 17 and had seemingly left on her own volition, she didn't qualify for an Amber Alert, which strictly requires evidence of a forced abduction. This legislative blind spot meant that while Tyler Thomas was driving her toward a townhome on Hunter Avenue, the public's phones remained silent. The Pink Alert would ensure that if a child is missing under concerning circumstances, such as being groomed online or lured by a predator, the alert goes out instantly, regardless of whether there was a struggle at the scene. The advocacy for Hailey's Law gained rapid momentum, with over 50,000 people signing a change.org petition by February 2, 2026. The legislation, which has now caught the attention of Indiana lawmakers like State Representative Maureen Bauer, doesn't just call for an alert. It demands a fundamental shift in how schools handle digital safety. The petition calls for mandatory predator awareness education in Indiana schools, moving beyond the "don't talk to strangers" lessons of the past. It focuses on the modern reality of digital manipulation, how predators use gaming platforms like Discord or Xbox Live to pose as peers, build trust, and eventually convince children to meet up. Hailey's Law aims to teach kids the specific red flags of grooming, the digital breadcrumbs that preceded her disappearance. In Ohio, The legal case against Tyler Thomas continues to unfold with grim precision. While the initial charges were pandering obscenity and tampering with evidence, the discovery of Hailey's body in Perry County has set the stage for a capital murder trial. Thomas remains in the Franklin County Jail on a $1.5 million bond. But the focus is now on Hocking County, where he allegedly maintained the short-term rental property used during the commission of the crime. Prosecutors are working to stack the charges, ensuring that even if a murder conviction faces delays, the digital evidence found on his phone, recorded at the Hunter Avenue townhome, is enough to keep him behind bars for life. The story of Hailey Buzbee has become a cautionary tale for the digital age, but it is also a story of a father's refusal to let his daughter be forgotten as a statistic. George Buzbee's mission is to ensure that Hailey is the last child in Indiana to fall through the runaway gap. He has stood before cameras and legislators alike, reminding them that in 2026, a predator doesn't need a van, they only need a smartphone. The pink alert would have turned every citizen in Ohio and Indiana into a pair of eyes for Hailey on January 5th. As the legal system prepares to hold Tyler Thomas accountable for the light he extinguished, the legacy of Hailey's law is already beginning to shine. It is a legacy of protection, education, and a community-wide vow that a child's digital safety is as critical as their physical safety. The memory of the girl, frolicking through the halls, is no longer just a reminder of what was lost. It is the blueprint for a future where every child lured into the shadows is met with a statewide searchlight. The case of Hailey Buzbee is a tragedy that spanned 3 counties and 2 states, but its resolution will be written in the laws of Indiana. Through the grief, the frustration, and the hunt for justice, one thing remains certain: the pink alert will be the siren that Hailey never got, a permanent legacy for a girl who deserved to come home. And as always, you've been watching True Crime Story Vault, where every story is told with facts, empathy, and respect for those who can no longer speak for themselves. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button and comment your thoughts below. Until next time, remember, the truth is never buried.